Well, hello, lovely humans, and welcome back to my channel. If you are watching this on Wedding Chicks or over on Facebook, thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new here, hi, my name's Jamie. I am a wedding planner based in Southern California, and I do wedding planning videos. Huzzah! Which you probably figured out, and if you haven't, that's okay. Let's move on, shall we? For today's video, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about wedding catering. That's something that I haven't really touched a whole lot on my channel yet, and there are so many details that go into selecting caterer and so many different options in front of you that I put together a list, of course, because list making is a thing of mine, of different catering styles and the pros and cons of each of them. So without further ado, let's jump right on in. Before we launch into the different styles of catering, there are 5 factors that you should be aware of when selecting your wedding caterer. First and foremost, it needs to be a timely experience for 2 reasons. 1, you want the food to be at the appropriate temperature. You don't want salad to be sitting in the sun for too long, and you don't want chicken to be sitting out for too long because then it's like lukewarm and nobody wants food that's not at the right temperature. So it's gotta be timely because the food needs to be eaten at its freshest point. And another reason it needs to be timely is for your event flow. Anything that takes too long, guests will get antsy, the temperature goes off, it'll feel like it's taking forever to go from one activity to the next. So it needs to be efficient in the way that it is delivered, whether that be plated, buffet style, whatever it happens to be. It needs to be done in a timely manner. The second factor you're gonna wanna consider is the amount of options that come with it. Obviously, you wanna have a few different options based on people's palates, dietary restrictions, allergies, those sorts of things. But there's a flip side to that as well. You don't want to give them too many options because then they're going to be like that person at Starbucks who clearly has never been to a coffee shop before in their life and just staring at the menu like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting right now. That will happen in your buffet line or at your food truck if you give them too many options. So be sure to keep it nice and limited. I recommend 2 to 3 different entrees and 2 to 3 different sides, maybe 2 salads, some bread, but keep it pretty basic. Just enough options to make sure that you're covering all different palates, but not so many that people start to get really bogged down when it comes to decision-making time. Because that will take time, and refer back to the first factor, we don't want things to take too long. The third factor you're gonna wanna consider is portions. Obviously, if you're feeding people, you want them to leave feeling full. You don't want them to get like 2 little carrot sticks and a little itty-bitty piece of chicken and that's all they get for their meal. You want the portion size to be big enough to feed even the hungriest of people, but not so big that you have a lot of leftover food, because that means you're basically wasting money. And that brings us to the fourth factor, cost. Wedding food takes up a giant portion of your budget, like giant portion of your budget. So you wanna make sure that you're allocating that appropriately. With certain styles of catering, you can limit how much people are getting, and that's good because that means you're not paying for excess food. But that means that their portion size may be a little bit smaller than some people like. You also want to be aware of the cost of the amount of servers that you are going to have. The more servers, the more it costs. The less servers, the less it costs, but that means that some things may not get done, or it may not be done in the style that you want. And the last factor you want to consider is how interactive the food is. This one sounds like a silly point to bring up, but really, if you think about it, food is an interactive experience. We share meals together because we want to interact with each other. So when you're feeding your guests at your wedding, you want them to enjoy the experience, not just the food that's on their plate, but the actual experience of eating together with the people that are at their table and with the other guests around them. I feel like I should probably say, of course you want the food to be delicious. That's a given. We know that we want the food to be delicious. That's not something we're really gonna cover in this video because you're gonna pick food that tastes good, right? So with those factors in mind, let's go ahead and discuss some of the most common styles of food service for your wedding, going from most traditional to least traditional. The first option is a plated style dinner. And that is when a chef and or cook will prepare the food, place it on a plate, and servers will bring it out to your guests at their tables. Your guests don't have to get up, they just get the food brought to them, which is delightful because it feels super fancy and super elegant. The pros of having a plated dinner is, 1, it's timely, which is great because that means that the food should come out at the appropriate temperature and your event flow should go pretty smoothly. Another pro for having a plated dinner is it helps to keep the cost of food down. Because the chef knows exactly how many people are eating and the exact portions that are going on the plate, there isn't a whole lot of excess that he or she will need to order to make sure everyone is fed. They know the exact amounts, they're good to go. This also means that they don't have to leave the table, which is kind of a perk for some people. It means they get to stay and enjoy the conversations at their table and have the food brought to them. Now, some of the cons for having a plated dinner. One would be there are less options. You'll typically have your guests select their food preferences on your RSVP card or when they log on to RSVP on your website, and they'll select chicken, steak, fish, what have you. And they're locked into that decision. There is no last minute, oh, hey, can I add this on? Nope, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. They also can't get more food. Their portion is predetermined by the chef in the kitchen, and again, they get whatever is served to them on the plate. So for some people, that may mean that there is too much food on their plate. For other people, that may mean that there is not enough food on their plate. It also can be more costly. So even though we save money on the overall food costs, it's more costly because it requires more servers. You'll need more bodies to move the food from the kitchen to the guest tables in a timely manner. So while you're saving money on food costs, you're spending more on employees that you'll need there for the event. The second style of service is cafeteria buffet style. And I know, it doesn't really conjure up great images when using the term cafeteria when it comes to food service, because all I can picture is a lunch lady with a hairnet, but it is the appropriate term for this style of service. Cafeteria buffet style is when there are servers serving the food from chafing dishes, and guests will get up, form a line with their plates, and have the servers serve them the food. Some of the pros for this option. While it isn't necessarily as timely as doing a plated dinner, it's still pretty fast because there are servers there moving them down the line. That means that your event flow is going really well and that the temperature of the food should be pretty spot on as long as the servers keep the line moving. There are more options with a buffet style than there are with a plated style because a guest can change their mind at the last minute. They can also ask for bigger portions, which they could not do with a plated style. But because the servers are there, they can kind of help to limit some of the portions, so while guests can ask for more, they won't get away with murder or a whole plate full of mashed potatoes. It can be more cost-effective in one regard because you need less servers for a cafeteria buffet style. And it is definitely more interactive for the guests when they get up, walk to the buffet table, they're interacting with the servers, they're talking with guests that may not necessarily be at their table, so it provides a different experience than the plated dinner would. Some of the cons. There could possibly be too many options, which could cause the line to hold up just a little bit, which is why it's a good idea to have those servers there to make sure everyone moves down the line pretty quickly. And because the chef can't determine how much people are actually going to eat, there's going to be a bigger percentage of food that you're going to have to purchase to accommodate that. So while you save on the servers, you spend more on the food because you just don't know how much people are going to eat. Whereas when you put it on the plate, they're limited to whatever they get on the plate. The third style of service would be buffet style without servers. So it's basically the same exact thing as the last one, except for it is self-served. Some of the pros to this. The options are completely limitless. People can eat whatever they want, take as much as they want, and fill up their plates. They can also adjust their own portions as they see fit. So if they really don't want a salad, they don't have to take a salad. If they want a lot of mashed potatoes, they can take a lot of mashed potatoes. You can already see the con developing here though, right? You're also saving on servers. There are no servers serving the food, so you are not paying someone to scoop vegetables onto a plate. Again, it is more interactive than a plated dinner because guests are getting up, moving around, getting themselves food. But with all those in mind, there are some pretty steep cons to this as well. The first one would be that there is no one to monitor these people. And the reason I say it like that is I just think of my husband as a wedding guest. If you leave him unattended near food, he will take too much. That's who my husband is. He just loves food. And that's okay. But you're gonna have guests like that too, where they will overserve themselves, which means you need to spend more money to make sure there's plenty of food for people like my husband who take too much food. Because there's no one serving it, there's no one to monitor their portions, there's no one to describe any of the ingredients for those with dietary restrictions, and there's no one to keep the line moving. So if someone is waffling back and forth between the Caesar salad and the spring salad, and taking 3 minutes to do so, the line is not moving and there's no one there to encourage them along. Also, because you don't have servers, there isn't anyone to bus your tables. This is not something we've discussed so far because you've had servers in the other two options. Bussing tables is extremely important and can be very easily overlooked. So if you have a self-serve station, keep in mind that there's no one to clear your tables or scrape your plates or throw away your disposable plates if that's the avenue that you're taking. Bussers are important, and when you don't have servers, you don't have anyone to clean up. And you can get stuck with a hefty cleaning fee from your venue. And that is like a not fun thing to deal with. The next style of catering would be stations, and these can either be manned or unmanned. We've already kind of talked through the pros of having servers or not having servers. You know it's gonna go faster with servers, you know you're gonna control portions more with servers, but you know you're gonna spend more money on servers. Without servers, people kind of like are kids with an unattended cookie jar. Like they can take more and you just hope that they don't. So stations you can either have with servers or without. And what stations are is basically tables around your reception space with different styles of food. There sometimes can even be really, really interactive stations, like a carving station or a cook-to-order station, which can be extremely fun. Now, some of the pros for having stations. Guests can pick whatever they want, and because you have stations, people kind of know which one they want to go to instead of shuffling everyone through the same exact line. That means that it should be pretty timely getting them through this whole thing, and there shouldn't be too many lines, which is great for your event flow and the temperature of the food. Now, some of the cons with doing this though, again, is the extra food that you'll have to order, because anything that's not plated means there's gonna have to be a 10 to 20% addition, wiggle room, extra food, insert term here. The other con with having stations is something that we haven't really discussed yet, and that is it takes up a ton of space. Because you don't have one neat buffet line, you're gonna have tables kind of spread out throughout the space, usually against the walls or in corners, but they require a pretty big footprint of your event. So if you're crammed into a space, stations may not work for you. The next catering option would be food trucks. Now, I've done an entire video on food trucks. If you want to watch it, I'm gonna go ahead and link it up here. Be kind though when watching that, because that's one of my first videos, and let's just say I was still getting stuff figured out. I'd like to think I've improved a little bit since then, but it does have a bunch of information when it comes to food trucks. Now, the pros when it comes to food trucks is it's extremely interactive. It's very cool, it creates such a neat vibe, and guests really do tend to enjoy the experience. The options with food trucks are practically limitless, and your guests will really, really enjoy that. You can stylize it in whatever way you want, you can bring in whatever trucks you want, and it really gives your event a unique vibe that guests will be guaranteed to remember. And portion size doesn't really tend to be an issue because food trucks are going to serve the same amount that they would serve in their normal food truck day-to-day lives. So the portion is being controlled by the food truck servers, and not by the guests themselves, which keeps costs down, which is great. Another thing, you're not gonna be paying for servers. I mean, you're paying for the food truck and the people working in the food truck, but you're not paying for servers, which again, I'm gonna go back to, you're gonna need someone to bust your tables, so that's also a con. Speaking of cons, food trucks, options, there are a lot. If you have multiple food trucks, guests may not know which truck they wanna go to, and that's a problem, because if you have 85 people at the sushi truck and 2 people at the burrito truck, that means that the sushi truck may run out of food and the burrito truck may have an excess of food. So you're gonna wanna keep your options pretty limited. I recommend anywhere from 2 to 5 trucks, but 5 is really pushing it. I would say 2 to 3 at best, and tell each truck to limit their options to 2 or 3 options for each truck. That still leaves a whole big margin that you're gonna have to accommodate for. So like usually our rule of thumb for this is if you have 150 people and 2 food trucks, you would anticipate having 85 to 90 guests eat at each truck. So that means even though you only have 150 people, you're paying for 180 meals. You have to buffer for that because you don't know which direction people are gonna go. And that is not cost effective. You are paying for a bunch of extra food that may or may not be eaten. And the timeliness of food trucks. I don't know if you've ever been to a food truck, but usually they're cooked to order, which is fantastic because that means you're getting fresh food, it's piping hot or nice and cool, whatever the temperature needs to be. But that also means that you're waiting around for your food. And that can take a really, really, really long time, like a really long time. So when you're looking for food trucks, be sure to find someone who's done a wedding before and knows how valuable this time frame is. Because on a Saturday at a park, you don't really need to be worried about how quickly you're cranking out food. But when you've got 70 guests waiting to get their food in a timely manner, it needs to happen quick. So if you're looking for food trucks, be sure that they've done weddings before. And also the options. I know I already talked about it, but I'm gonna bring it up again. Make sure the options are limited because you don't want the Starbucks person, the indecisive person staring at the menu, asking about each and every little ingredient. You just want them to go up and say, I'll take the chicken and rice. Okay, cool, thanks, bye. You need it to be timely and effective to get the meal moving, make sure everyone's fed, and get onto the dancing portion of the night. And then the last option would be something that's not necessarily super common. I've never had any of my couples choose this option, but I do know that it is pretty popular for those who are trying to remain more budgeted, and that is cake and appetizers only. Now, obviously, there's a huge benefit to this. You're not paying for full meals, which means more than likely you're not gonna be spending a whole lot on your food budget. You also don't have to worry about the timeliness of it because everyone's just hanging out, grazing on appetizers, eating some cake. Your event flow won't be affected by this food service really at all. This also encourages guest interaction. You don't necessarily need to have tables and chairs when offering just cake and appetizers. Everyone can mingle about and enjoy themselves, and so you save money on rentals too, and everyone's interacting. And the portions are going to be obviously a lot smaller. Now, the cons for doing cake and appetizer only is also the portions are gonna be a lot smaller. If you choose to go this avenue, make sure your guests know that they're not getting an actual meal. Also, be prepared for a ton of appetizers because people at weddings like to eat. So even if you're not feeding them a full meal, you're going to need to plan for more appetizers than you would if you were doing a traditional style meal. You'll also need to spend more on the bar because if there isn't a bunch of food, people will drink more. They're looking for something to do with their hands, and if you're not gonna give them food, they're gonna give themselves drinks. So while it is cost effective because you're not paying for meals, it's not cost effective because you're paying more for the bar. That, and a lot of people think it's just kind of weird. They just do. They're not used to it. It's not normal. So for them, having an appetizer only reception when they're expecting a meal, they may not like it. And that's entirely up to you. If food is not a priority to you, that's okay. This is your wedding. This is your event. You get to make that call, but make sure your guests know because most of the time they're expecting a big meal. Whew, that was a long one. That was so long. Oh my gosh. Sorry. If you made it this far, congratulations. So that's all we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you guys aren't doing so already, go ahead and give us a follow over on social media. You'll find us at JW Coordination on all of the social medias. I just said means. That was unfortunate. And if you haven't done so already, like this video because you like the video, and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. As always, a huge shout out to my gal pals over at Wedding Chicks for hosting this week's video, and until next week, bye guys!